Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and nostalgic peeps, to my channel, Slime and Slashers, where, we talk about everything from Nickelodeon slime to horror movie slashers, but plenty of stuff in between, including books. Today's video, it's another book-themed video, and it's one of my favorite ones that I do. It is the Kelsi's Choice Awards video. It's kind of like a reading survey type of video, but with nominations for each category, in addition to me picking one winner at the very end of telling you the nominations. So let's go to the short intro, and when we come back, we will go through all of the awards. Welcome back, guys! This is my third year doing this awards ceremony. You can see the other years down below. The first year I called it something different, but last year I changed it to the Kelsi's Choice Awards, which is a little bit of a spoof to the Kids' Choice Awards. So I'm not giving out any kind of blimps. The essential premise of this award ceremony is that I nominate a whole bunch of different books that I really enjoyed, that I think fit the category, and I award one winner. So we will get into the awards in just a second, but just imagine instead of a blimp, it's something like a Kelsi Corn Award, like it's me in the shape of a candy corn, and that's what I would be giving to these books. That would be my award design if I were to have my own actual thematic physical trophy type of award. So speaking of Kelsi Corns, the first category is the corniest book that I read during the year of 2023. And this isn't corny like, oh, this is lame, this is cheesy. It's corny as in, I love it. Everything about this book screams me. Kelsi Corn, so that's why it's the corniest. It's basically the book that has all of these different elements that would appeal the most to me. The nominations are Nelfs by Sydney Williams, How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix, Spectre by Stephen Laws, Death Song, and Friday the 13th, The Jason Strain. And the award for the corniest book goes to dun 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 dun, Nelfs, of course. It had to win. It's a book that I've been talking about literally the entirety of 2023. I think I read it back in early February of 2023, and I continued to talk about it until the very end of the year and into this year, which is now 2024 at the time I'm filming this. So I love this, truly. It's so zany. It's so me. Everything that I would want in a book is in this book, and that's why it had to win the award. Essentially, we've got this little girl named Heaven. She is sweet, she is innocent, and she likes a show called Nelfs. However, the Nelfs somehow come to life from the TV show. Think of Smurfs, but green. But it's similar to Smurfs. And they start to taunt Heaven, and not only taunt her, but also they're pretty brutal about her mom. They're like,
yo, Heaven, your mom's a bitch, your mom's a whore.
I'm sorry, I've said that phrase so many times in 2023 because I've been quoting the lines from this book. I know it's terrible. I know I said it so many times during the last 365 days or so, but hey. I freaking love this book, and it's a ton of fun, and it goes to some unexpected places. This is honestly everything you could want in a vintage horror book, and I'm so glad I picked it up in 2023. The next category is for the most unique read of the year. This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno, Stitch by Mark Morris, Head Like a Hole by Andrew Van Wey, Apartment 5 is Alive by Russell Atwood, Maggot Screaming by Max Booth III, The Pilo Family Circus, The Haunted Forest Tour, and Slade House. And the winner, Stitch by Mark Morris. This made my top 10 of the middle of the year when I did a midway check-in just after the month of June was over in 2023, and it's probably gonna wind up on my final top books that I read in 2023, which is coming soon, by the way, but it definitely stands out as the most unique thing overall that I read for the entirety of 2023. But I do want to give props to the other nominees before I talk about this one. So all of the other nominees had great, very different elements that I haven't seen in any other book. This Thing Between Us, it mixed cosmic with grief horror, and also it had a hint of possession horror in it too, but not 100% straight up possession. It was fantastic. Had like a whole, lots of weird elements, twists and turns. I just thought it was so well done. Apartment 5 is alive. You got an apartment that is literally sentient and loves Halloween. I mean, how can you beat that? That is a fantastic, unique, different premise. Maggots screaming. The son and father dig up bodies out of their garden, and the bodies look just like them. And then not only do they watch as the bodies start to deteriorate, they may also start deteriorating as well. Pilo Family Circus, a very, very different type of carnival-themed, circus-themed book. I thought it stood out among all the carnival horror I read in 2023. And the Haunted Forest Tour mixed some Halloween elements, creature feature elements, alien type of elements, and humor, of course. And Slade House was just a very unique take. It had weird elements, but haunted house elements as well. I can't even explain what it was about because it was that unique. But all of these nominees are worth checking out. But Stitch, like I said, it did stand out above the rest. The horror imagery was fantastic. There were so many characters and just really weird happenings. It's very hard to describe what this is about. So weird, but utterly fantastic. And speaking of weird, the next category is the award for the weirdest read of the year. And I read a ton of freaking weird books, but I gotta say, a lot of weird, amazing books because they all surprised me. Here are the nominees for the book that was the weirdest read of the year. Werecage by Ian Forty. The Cook. Edenville. The Cipher by Kathy Koja. The Nothing That Is. And Queen of Teeth by Haley Piper. Before we announce the winner, I just want to give props to all of these nominees. Werecage, there is a literal werewolf Nicolas Cage. It's freaking incredible, fantastic, bonkers, zany. Also, it made me laugh, it made me smile, it had some emotion, it had everything you could want in a very weird read. And it all worked together so marvelously, in my opinion. You can't take it too seriously, but I do think it was well done for being such an out there concept. And at one point, there is a little version of Nicolas Cage that is like the size of a mini Chihuahua type of dog. I mean, if that isn't weird, what is? I don't know. The Cook, at one point, there are literal barf stations at a party. That's all I'm gonna say. Then we move on to Edenville. It had tons of weird stuff. I can't even get into it. Like, literally, from the beginning to the end, it was completely weird. The Cipher, we are following this couple as they discover a hole of some sort in the closet room of their apartment, and they become obsessed with it, and they literally just start staying in there, and stuff devolves from there, and it gets super, super, you might have guessed it, yeah, weird. The Nothing That Is, super incredibly weird. You got dinosaurs involved, crazy biker gangs, and this guy who is a caterer, and he's got to feed this party, but it ends up being this random dude with a sheet over his freaking body. And finally, Queen of Teeth. Well, she develops a set of teeth, this main character, in her vagina. I'd say that's pretty unusual. But the winner has to be Edenville, because like I said, from start to finish, weird, 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 but weird in the best way. I mean, it even says on the back here on a blurb by Eric LaRocca, in Edenville there's a captivating and equally irresistible kind of frantic intensity pulsing from each and every page, the raw, powerful energy of a new, uninhibited talent in horror fiction. So I do think that this isn't getting the best ratings because it's mismarketed. It should have been marketed as a super weird book, not really more of a horror book. I think it's, honestly, it leans into more weird fiction than pure horror fiction. Are there horror elements in here? Yes, yes, yes. But like I said, it definitely leans more into the weird. So when this author and his girlfriend get invited to move to a college town, the town is called Edenville, the author, his name is Cam, he thinks everything has changed, his luck has finally turned in his favor, but his girlfriend Quinn is suspicious. She thinks that moving is a bad idea. She knows about Edenville, she knows bad things happen there, she really doesn't think it's a good idea to move back. Cam kind of disregards her worries, they move there anyway, and shit goes down. I highly recommend this if you love the weird and unusual in your fiction. Next category is a category and a type of horror that I love, and it is the category for best grief horror that I read in 2023. And I read a lot of grief horror in 2023. It's actually one of my favorite subgenres of horror, and because of that reason, and because I read a lot of those types of books, I have a lot of nominees for this category. And the nominees are Blanky by Keelan Patrick Burke, Crossroads by Laurel Hightower, This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno, The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon, and last but certainly not least, Monstrilio. I thought that was such a powerful book, and I want to give props to all the nominees because if you like grief horror, you should really check out each and every one of these books. They're all fantastic. Monstrilio was a freaking debut novel, and it really impressed me. Blanky was super short. It was a quick novella. However, it packed a punch, and it also had some weirdness too at the end. So not only grief, but weirdness mixed in. Crossroads by Laurel Hightower. I thought that was really, really well done. Gave me Pet Sematary vibes. This Thing Between Us mixed cosmic. I said this earlier, along with grief, along with some possession type of elements as well, and it did it very well. The Winter People was one of the last books I read for the year of 2023, and it thoroughly impressed me. My first by Jennifer McMahon, but it won't be my last. It was beautifully written, and the grief was so heart-wrenching, honestly. The winner of this category, though, has to be This Thing Between Us. I nearly cried at some passages of the descriptions of grief in here. So relatable if you've ever lost anyone that you're close to or that you love. And I just thought it was so well written, and all the elements working with the grief, all those elements complemented each other and worked to make this an outstanding novel. So because of all the elements in addition to the grief, I think this one stood above the other grief horror, but they're all wonderful, as I said. Next category, best imagery. So essentially the book with the best imagery. The writing makes you be able to see exactly what the author is trying to get you to picture in your head. And they do such a good job with their writing that you can visualize what they're trying to show you, what they're trying to say. So the nominees for this category for best imagery of all the books I read in 2023 are Edenville by Sam Rebellion, Stitch by Mark Morris, and The Cotton Candy Massacre by Christopher Robertson. Let me just say that The Cotton Candy Massacre, I have never been more grossed out by the idea of cotton candy, and I didn't think it was possible to be grossed out by cotton candy because I love cotton candy. So props to Robertson because he did a good job at making it really sound quite disgusting, off-putting, and gross. Edenville, we talked about it. Not only is it weird, but it does have great imagery. You really can picture some of the gross things that are described in the book. There are giant spiders at one point. There are these creepy old women, which are also wonderfully described. So lots of wonderful imagery from start to finish, just like the weirdness. And it all works together so fantastically. And last but not least, Stitch by Mark Morris. And my winner, you might have guessed, is Stitch. So I'm going to take this second to talk more about Stitch. I think Mark Morris is one of the most underrated horror authors out there. He kind of started writing at the end of the horror boom, when the horror boom was dying out in the late 80s, early 90s, and I feel like he really missed out on getting some of that attention that he might have gained had he published work earlier, and that's not his fault. It's just the way the timing worked out, unfortunately. But I always take the chance to shout out his work because it's fantastic, and it's literally some of the best horror imagery I've ever read. I have read 3 total books by Mark Morris: Toady, Stitch, and The Winter Tree. The Winter Tree is a little bit unpolished because it's the first story he ever wrote that wasn't ever really published. They actually published it recently as almost like an exercise to show people what an author's first attempt at writing a book might look like in terms of the naked, bare bones stuff. Not anything that's polished or anything, but you could see the imagery that he was trying to convey. It was there, even in that very rough first novel that he wrote. His true first novel, Toady, has a lot of wonderful imagery, and that one is just out of this world, fantastic. I always tout that one. Stitch, same great imagery. So I had to give it to Mark Morris for Stitch because, like I said, he's still going strong with his horror imagery. I wish I had some passages picked out for you, but trust me, I'm not exaggerating. He is so good at making you disturbed, at making you visualize what he's writing within the story. I think he's a master, honestly, and I will continue to shout from the rooftops about his work for that reason. Next category is for the book with the best characterization. I read so many wonderful books that had well-rounded, rich, fully fleshed out characters, so this was a hard one to narrow down. So the nominees are Fear by Ronald Kelly, Autumn Crow High, Fresh Hell, Mayfly, and Gone South by Robert McCammon. Gone South, there are these two bounty hunters. They're hilarious. They don't get along. One is an Elvis impersonator. The other has a third arm coming out of his chest. Sounds strange. It is strange, but the characters are oddly very lovable. Now, those are supposed to be the antagonists in the story, but those were my favorite characters. There is a very down on his luck protagonist, which I did enjoy, but I think my favorite characters, like I said, were the two bounty hunter guys, and they were fantastic. So their characterization was my favorite in all of that book. Mayfly, the main character Maeve, she is twisted, she is demented, but I couldn't help but feel for her, honestly, and I was really rooting for her, and even though she's kind of terrible, she's also very interesting, and I was very intrigued to see what it was like to be in her head, because for the whole novel you are reading from her perspective. You are inside of her very twisted, demented brain, and I had a good time, honestly. Fear by Ronald Kelly. Man, that main character of Jeb is this 12-year-old boy. He's living with his grandma and his injured father. His father got injured in the war. Can't even remember that he's Jeb's father. So it's a very sad situation. Jeb's grandmother as well is also diagnosed with cancer, so he has to deal with that too. And there's a creature basically terrorizing their little town. Jeb takes it upon himself to try to save the town and also try to do something to save his father and grandmother, or make their lives better, let's say. And it's a fantastic journey, and the characterization of Jeb is done so masterfully, I gotta say. I really felt for Jeb, and I felt like I knew him. And Autumn Crow High, Fresh Hell, we've got two best friends, Bailey and Melody, and I love their friendship, and I love the characterization of both of the characters. You really feel for both of these girls and what they're struggling with, and I just thought the way they were written was so well done. And that brings me to the winner, and the winner is dun dun dun, Autumn Crow High, Fresh Hell. The friendship between those two, I gotta say, it blew me away, how strong their friendship was, how strongly I felt for each of them individually and as a pair. This does have a lot of nostalgia. It has a great Halloween-y vibe and atmosphere because it takes place in Autumn Crow, which is a town where it's Halloween 24/7, 365 days of the year. I just think it's a fantastic read that you could read any time of year that you're looking for those Halloween-y vibes, and I'm so glad I read it. Next category is for the award for most emotional read. This one, it's a tight race, it's hard. I have a lot of nominees, and the nominees are Beloved by Toni Morrison, This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno, Monstrillo, Autumn Crow High, Fresh Hell by Cameron Chaney, We Spread by Ian Reid, Of Foster Homes and Flies, and the winner is Beloved. This was such an emotional read. Honestly, to be very honest, these were almost neck and neck, Autumn Crow High, Fresh Hell, and Beloved, but the reason Beloved wins for most emotional is because this is based off of a true story. It's following consequences right after the Civil War of a woman, Setha, and her family, and how they're dealing with life post-slavery. And Setha's really having a hard go of things, and she did something horrible that she could never take back, that truly, literally haunts her in her home. And so it's just such a sad, terrible story. And you also learn about a lot of other horrors that took place while Setha was a slave. And so it's just so sad. It's so emotional. And my friend Kat and I actually had a book club chat about this. It was one of my book club picks for the year of 2023. I will link the chat below if you don't mind hearing us talk about it with spoilers. It is more of a classic type of book, so it was a little more difficult to read because the language is more flowery, but it's worth the effort because it's a beautiful story, but really, honestly, overall, it's beautifully sad and depressing, but there is a glimmer of hope that shines through at the end, and overall, all the elements together work to make this such an emotional and impactful read. But if you love emotion in your horror, you honestly can't go wrong with any of the books I nominated for most emotional book. I already talked a little bit about Monstrillo, about This Thing Between Us, about Autumn Crow High, Fresh Hell. We Spread. That took me by surprise. We're following an old woman who winds up in a nursing home, and she doesn't have her full mental capacities anymore. She's having problems with her memory. And to me, that is so emotional and sad to read about, because what's more scary than, forgetting who you are and also forgetting your own memories? I think that is terrifying and sad, sad, sad. That's why that was emotional for me specifically. But all of these books are wonderful, and I truly recommend them all if you like a nice tearjerker. Next award is for my favorite character that I read from 2023. And I have so many characters that I discovered in 2023 that I just adore, but here are my nominees. We have Jeb from the book Fear by Ronald Kelly. Mothman from the book I'm in Love with Mothman. Pelvis Isley, who's the Elvis impersonator from the book Gone South by Robert McCammon. He was a hoot, I gotta tell you. He was so awesome, and he really was a sweet guy because he loved his dog, Mama. Their relationship was so cute. Also, another great character was Maeve from Mayfly. I just felt like I truly got to know her, like she was a fully fleshed out real life person, but she was fictional. And the winner is Jeb from Fear. Not only is Jeb my favorite character from 2023, I think Jeb may be one of my favorite all-time characters. I really felt for him, especially how hard it was for him when his grandma got sick. I could especially relate to that, and I think this is why he won for favorite character for me, because his love for his grandma is so sweet and so relatable. I also loved my two grandmas, and I was especially close with my mama on my mom's side. It's my mom's mom, and she passed away a few years ago, but just when Jeb found out that his grandma was sick and how distraught he was over that was so heart-wrenching, and it was a gut punch, I gotta tell you. It was so sad. But through all of his troubles and all the adversity he had to face, he still just kept going. He still wanted to do what was right. He still was a good person. And that's why I freaking love Jeb. He was only 12 years old, but he showed such maturity for someone of his age. And I just think he was a fantastic character, and I still think about him, and I love him. I love him. Jeb, I love you. Poor Jeb. But yes, he's such a great person, and I'm so glad I got to know him, kinda. Know him, quote, that's what I mean, from this book in 2023. Now we have the award for Best Villain. So kind of the opposite of favorite character, this is Best Villain. Somebody who is just, terrible, horrible. You want to spit at their shoes. Obviously, though, these characters are well written, and so well written that you really come to hate them and dislike them and loathe them in some cases. So here are some of the nominees for the best villains. The Burnouts from Satan's Burnouts Must Die by David Sodergren. Zelda from Slasher Witch at the Water Park. Nelfs from Nelfs. And finally, Dorian, the antagonist from Alien: The Cold Forge. And the winner is Dorian! And this surprises even me, honestly, because you might have thought I was gonna pick Nelfs because they're hilarious, because they're like,
Your mom's a bitch, your mom's a whore.
No, Dorian is the most despicable character I've ever read. Nelfs, yeah, they were saying mean things, but at the end of the day, they're kind of fun and funny. I don't want them insulting my mom, but it wasn't my mom they were insulting in the book, so you know what? Maybe I kind of like Nelfs a little bit, even though they're villains and bad guys. But they are cute-looking cartoon characters, too, so keep that in mind. They don't really look that evil. Dorian, our main antagonist from Alien: The Cold Forge, is the biggest scumbag and douchebag in the entire freaking world. If you don't believe me, read the book. Full of action, full of tension, and also very, very complex characters. Dorian was complex in his motives and what he liked and why he was so evil, kind of, but he was also just the darkest soul I've ever read about, ever, maybe. He just loved the aliens because he's like, oh, kindred spirits. Anybody who thinks freaking alien is a kindred spirit is effed up, okay? So Dorian's effed up, and he loves to manipulate people. Anyway, I don't want to get into the whole plot of Alien: The Cold Forge, but if you're interested at all, in a media tie-in book to the Alien movie franchise. This has got to be the one you check out. It is so good. I am not a huge Alien franchise fan, but I freaking love this book. It surprised me, one of my biggest surprises of the year, and I highly recommend it for that reason. But you will also hate Dorian if you read this. Trust me, you will come to want to punch him in the face. You'll be like, this is the worst guy like I've ever read about, ever in my life. So I definitely think he has to take the cake for best villain. Going back a little bit to one of the nominees, Zelda, she really couldn't win for best villain because although she was fun and funny, she's this witch at this water park who gets woken up when this new water park opens right next to her bog. And she goes in there, starts to experience it, and actually starts to have a good time, but they keep trying to kick her out, so she starts to cause mischief and terror at the water park. But she loves frozen drinks she discovers while walking around at the water park, and she calls them Fro-Fros. So I love her. She can't really be the best villain because I didn't really hate her. I loved her, although she did some terrible things to the people at the water park. But yeah, that's a good villain. But that was more of like a so fun, funny kind of villain. It wasn't like a truly despicable. She didn't seem pure evil. Next category is for the award for the book with the best setting. There are quite a few nominees for this one, so let's get right into it. The nominees are The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon, The Good House by Tananarive Due, Cotton Candy Massacre by Christopher Robertson, Autumn Crow High, Fresh Hell by Cameron Chaney, The September House, and Frozen Charlotte. And the winner is Cotton Candy Massacre by Christopher Robertson. You can't beat a carnival setting, and this was probably the best carnival-themed setting that I read. I read quite a few books in 2023 that were set at the carnival because I did a whole readathon on my Patreon called The Carnival, and we did that for the whole month of September. But the one that stood out in terms of setting and also just overall as a great overall carnival/circus-themed read was this book, Cotton Candy Massacre. I really could picture the carnival, the clowns there after they ate the cotton candy, terrifying, or anybody who ate the cotton candy, not just the clowns working there, but yeah, fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. The imagery was really great too, as I mentioned earlier. It had a lot going for it. I thoroughly recommend this book if you like carnival reads and a good carnival setting. The other nominees, a lot of great haunted house stories where the house was a really wonderful, creepy setting. Like I said, the September House was a different kind of haunted house, but it was a haunted house. Same thing with The Good House. It was a house that had a haunted element to it, but I loved it. Winter People, same thing. Not only a haunted house, but also a haunted forest area behind the house. Frozen Charlotte, also a very eerie, creepy haunted house kind of by this cliff. And I loved that as well. So lots of haunted houses, but Autumn Crow also could have easily taken this. It was actually very, very close between these two, I would say, were the two that I was having trouble with in terms of deciding between them the most. So it almost won because this would be a Halloween setting. Autumn Crow is a great setting because it's like it's Halloween, although this was set technically in summer in Autumn Crow. Autumn Crow, it's like it's Halloween any time of the year. So Autumn Crow is a great setting, but I'm also a sucker for carnival settings, so this won by just a hair. I gotta say, just a hair, barely. Next category is for the award for the book with the best atmosphere. The nominees are Candy Cane Kills by Brian McCauley, Red Harvest. This one had a great Halloween setting specifically, whereas Candy Cane Kills had a great Christmas wintry setting. Black Christmas, another great wintry Christmassy setting. The Nothing That Is, just a weird, wonderful setting, this very strange small town. We also have Hex, another strange small town, very odd, very weird, great atmosphere. We Sold Our Souls. The entirety of the book had wonderful atmosphere. We get to know this woman from a heavy metal band. She is trying to connect with her bandmates, even though the band has been broken up for a very, very long time. And she's trying to find out where and why the band went wrong. And finally, Below by Laurel Hightower. And the winner is Below by Laurel Hightower. I love this book. I thought it had great winter vibes. Also, great, strange, unsettling vibes. We've got cryptids involved with the appearance of Mothman. I just thought this book had such strong atmosphere, and I totally recommend it if you like cryptids at all, or and or if you like winter settings, because it had both elements, and both elements were really, really well done, creating this wonderful overall atmosphere. Next is the category that I've had the most trouble with deciding what the winner is going to be, and that category is the award that will go to the funniest read of 2023. My nominees are Death Song, Nelfs, Werecage, Friday the 13th, The Jason Strain, Night of the Living Trekkies, and Slasher Witch at the Water Park. Honestly, even as I'm filming this, I'm still debating on who the winner is. Who, you know what I mean? Which book is the winner? Not who. They're not people. But they kind of feel like friends. But anyway, I just put up the wrong book. So, honestly, these three could be the winners, as well as Jason Strain. So I honestly don't know. It's so hard. All of these were so funny. Nelfs, it was so funny. I laughed so many times. But it had more to it than that. So I'm going to eliminate Nelfs right here, right now. Death Song, very unique plot. Zany, out there. There were people who were having song battles, kind of like a sword fight, but with songs, and not a dance-off, it was like a sing-off. It was crazy, because the songs would almost act like spells and would do different magical things. Very close, but I'm going to eliminate this as well, but it's a big contender for funniest. Also, Night of the Living Trekkies, love this, so well-rounded. It had emotion, it had action, it had some great character work. It also had humor. This is such a close contender to be the winner, but I think I'm going to also eliminate this. It's so hard. This was so funny, though. I truly laughed out loud, and I was surprised because that doesn't happen to me super often, but these are the books that I think, if you like humor in your books, these, you can't go wrong. I think I'm going to officially give it to The Jason Strain. I had such a good time listening to this book. I listened to this because it is out of print and hard to find. You can find the audio read aloud by the host of the Slash Tracks Network. I will link him below. He's fantastic. He's keeping some vintage horror slasher books alive. I'm so happy he's doing that. So he read this book, and I had such a great time. I was building a puzzle while listening, and I laughed so many times. Jason is approached by an agent at one point, and the agent's like, "Jason, baby, I can make you rich, baby." And lots more stuff. At one point, Jason saves a woman from a shark attack. Then Jason, like, freaking fights the shark. So it's a battle between Jaws and Jason. But then, like, all of a sudden, the girl goes to hug Jason. And he's like, "Nah, bitch, I'm gonna slash you anyway." So she thought she was all saved and she was grateful. But then, like, Jason's like, "Nah, I'm gonna take you out anyway." I laughed so hard. I think I'm gonna give that the award. So the award for funniest goes to The Jason Strain, and you had to see me. Literally, I just picked it just now because I was going back and forth literally till just now. Next, we've got some cover themed awards. Awards for best covers. This next category is for best non-vintage cover. Autumn Crow High, Fresh Hell. That cover, by the way, was designed by the author Cameron Robeek. So Cameron Chaney wrote the book. Cameron Robeek, who's also an author, did the cover art. Wonderful, wonderful artwork. Mallrats by Ivy Tholen. Head Like a Hole by Andrew Van Wey. Mayfly by C.J. Lead. Candy Cane Kills by Brian McCauley. And Mr. Glowbones. If you like a great cover, these all have fantastic covers. These would all look good on your shelves. However, there is one winner for me. It's very hard to say this because Autumn Crow is so close to winning this, and so is Mallrats, because let me just show you in person what the wonderful Mallrats. I love a good skeleton. I can't pass up a skeleton, so here's the Mallrats cover. It is fantastic. I love this artist. Same artist does all of Ivy Tholen's book covers, and I just love all the art. Like, Tastes Like Candy is also phenomenal, as well as Permanent Damage. This one, another level, but it's so super close, but I have to give it to Mayfly. I got an arc of this. I didn't have to buy a physical copy because I was able to read it just, you know, through the publisher. However, I did go back and buy a physical copy because I love the cover so much. So this one, eyeballs get to me, so I think that's why this one kind of just sneaks a little bit ahead of Mallrats, because this cover freaks me out. It's off-putting, but it totally fits the vibe of the story. It goes hand in hand. It's an amazing cover. And for like kind of a mainstream publisher, it's impressive that they did a cover like this to me. So I feel like for independent stuff, you get more cool covers like this, but not always, but To see a mainstream publisher do this, I thought that was kind of like taking a chance, because this is kind of a graphic cover for a more mainstream type of publishing company, because this was published by Tor Nightfire. So I'm going to give it to this, but yeah. This isn't close behind, though. Just saying. Okay, Mayfly wins for that. Next category, Best Vintage Cover. The Eyes of the Beast, The Devil's Laughter, Nelfs by Sydney Williams, and Pin by Andrew Niederman. Again, all of these have great covers. You wouldn't go wrong if you purchased any or all of them for your shelves, because they'd all look great. But I'm going to go with The Devil's Laughter. You thought I was going to go with Nelfs, didn't you? I do love the Nelfs cover. It's one of my favorite book covers of all time. But the reason I'm going with this one, the book is so shitty. The cover is the only great thing about this book. The book itself, terrible. Do not buy it. If you ever saw this, I'd say, yeah, buy it for the cover, and for the cover alone. So because the cover is the only great thing about this, whereas Nelfs, the story is actually entertaining, and there are other things to enjoy about Nelfs, it's not the case. So that is why I am giving the best vintage cover to The Devil's Laughter, because after having actually read this book, I would have unhauled this had it not been for the cover. So the cover is the only reason this freaking book is still in my collection, hence why it is winning for best vintage cover. Next category is the book that was the most unexpected or biggest surprise for me in 2023. The nominees are It Only Happens in the Movies. Kind of romance, but also kind of just general fiction. Dead Romantics. This is definitely a romance. Loved it. Alien, The Cold Forge. Again, the reason why it would be on this surprise list is because I don't usually read any books having to do with the Alien movie franchise or any kind of sci-fi related books. So that's why it's on this list. Another nominee, The Nightmare Before Christmas, the novelization. I thought it would not live up to the movie, but it actually added some extra elements to the movie and to the characters from the movie, so it was a pleasant surprise that I enjoyed it as much as I did. And finally, Nelfs. I didn't think I'd love it as much as I did. I ended up talking about it all of 2023, so that's why it's nominated. And the winner goes to Alien, The Cold Forge. Like I said, it's unusual, one, that I'm reading anything to do with the movie franchise Aliens. It's not like I hate it. It's just that it's nothing that I go and seek out. I am so surprised I love this book as much as I did. Also because it had a lot of science in it, and I would consider it sci-fi. I just thoroughly had a great time, and I'm still blown away by how much I loved it. So thank you so much, Andrew, from It Came From the Page, for suggesting that I read that, because it's truly a book that I would have never, ever picked up otherwise if it had not been for you. So thank you. I truly would have not even known about this book's existence had it not been for you, and it was definitely my biggest surprise of 2023. You might have thought I was going to go with the romance, but I have been surprised by romance in the past, so it's a little bit less of a surprise the second year that I've enjoyed romance books. Like last year was the first time I ever enjoyed any romance book, so that was a surprise last year. This year, it's like, I enjoyed it last year a bit, so it's not as surprising that I might have enjoyed a few romances here and there this past year in 2023, so, it is what it is. That is why romance books did not win. Next, favorite paperback from hell read of 2023. I read about 44 paperback from hell books in 2023. I think that's a great number, and I'm very happy that I got to that many. There were some stinkers, yeah, but there were a whole bunch of great paperback from hell type of books that I read. So here are a few of the standouts for me. The nominees for the best vintage horror read of 2023 are Nelfs by Sydney Williams, of course. Nightblood by T. Chris Martindale. Familiar Spirit by Lisa Tuttle. Pin by Andrew Niederman. And Death Song by Douglas Borton. The winner is Familiar Spirit. You thought I was gonna say Nelfs again, didn't you? I can't say Nelfs because, funnily enough, the first 10 to 15% of Nelfs, I actually didn't like it. I thought I was gonna dislike the book. Then it picked up and got zany and crazy, and I loved it. At first, when the mom was very, very worried about her daughter, I thought it was a little whiny. I didn't like that. So I didn't love it from first page to last page. However, I came to very much love it, as you guys know, and it became a favorite of the year. But a book that I loved from the very start to the very end, Familiar Spirit by Lisa Tuttle. It had some zaniness, similar to Nelfs, but it also had a wonderful story. I love Lisa Tuttle's writing. This had to be my favorite vintage read. It was so close, though, honestly. And you know I'm still going to give a shout out to Nelfs, but yeah. Familiar Spirit overall, a very well-rounded paperback from hell read, and I had such a good time reading it for sure. Next category is for best writing of any book that I read in 2023. This is a hard category, very, very difficult to choose a winner. The nominees are Autumn Crow High, Fresh Hell, it's back, it's in another category. The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon. Another mention for Mayfly by C.J. Lead. I love that book. Monstrio, beautifully written. Beloved, as I said earlier, very beautifully written. And Slewfoot by Bram. Bram has quickly become a favorite of mine, even though I've only read 2 books by him, Krampus and Slewfoot. Loved both. Great writing. Before I reveal the winner, I will say, if you ask me next week, I could have a different winner. I think that time affects the decision for me for this. The last read that I truly think had wonderful writing that I read in 2023 was The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon. And that is the book that I'm going to give the award for best writing to because, like I said, it's fresh in my mind. I just read it in December of 2023 and I freaking loved it. I thought it was eloquent. I loved the very last line. When I was going through it, I was like, I want to mark this, I want to mark that, but I couldn't find my tabs. So I loved it. But if you ask me in a couple of months, I might say Autumn Crow. If you ask me in a year, I might say Beloved. All well-written books. You can't really go wrong with any of the books that I mentioned on that list. I think all of the nominees were just fantastically written. Next, the most thrilling or compulsive read of 2023. The nominees are Sundial by Catriona Ward, The Odds by Jeff Strand, The Last Housewife, and No Exit. All of these are fantastic books. They're kind of like nail biters. I read all of these in 1 or 2 sittings max. Very easy to read books. But the winner for definitely the most thrilling read of these would have to be No Exit. So tense, so stressful. Really had a good time reading that, and great winter vibes too if you like kind of cold settings in your books, especially if you're a seasonal reader and looking for something that is cold currently. That one would do wonderfully for you. Next up is for the book with the best audiobook that I listened to in 2023. The nominees are Nightmare Before Christmas, the movie novelization, Curse of the Reaper by Brian McCauley, Nelfs by Sydney Williams, and Episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. All of these books had fantastic audiobooks. You can't go wrong with any of them. I know some people might think the Nightmare Before Christmas audiobook goes a little too hardcore, but I personally enjoyed it. I thought it was a great performance, very reminiscent of the voices of the characters from the movie. I thought it was top-notch. However, the winner has to be Episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. The audiobook really adds an extra oomph to this read. I feel like the audiobook makes this even better. It's full cast, it's wonderfully performed, great sound effects even included. You can't go wrong if you haven't checked out this book if you use the audio, because I would tell everybody who wanted to pick up this book in 2023, use the audio, use the audio. It really, really added to the experience. Next up, best animal attack book that I read in 2023, Night of the Bat, Nightwing, Killer by Peter Tonkin, or Worms by James R. Montague. All of these are really solid animal attack books, but the winner has to be Worms! I really enjoyed Worms. It had a psychological element, not just an animal attack element, and so for that extra added element, that's why this kind of got nudged up to be the winner and the best overall animal attack book that I read in 2023. I guess I'm considering Bugs an animal. Yes, it fits into the category. I think this is a fantastic read. Now, the main character does get a little bit annoying when he's fighting with his wife, but his wife's also annoying. However, when it comes to the animal attack parts, I really, really enjoyed it, and I thought it was very different from other animal attack books that I have read, because I have read quite a few of them, so very, very good. Also kind of an older vintage book. This one is from 1979, so I had a good time with this one. Next category is for best slasher book that I read in 2023. The nominees are Escape from Happydale by Jack Quaid, Slash by Hunter Shea, Curse of the Reaper by Brian McCauley, Joyride by Stephen Cry, and The Jason Strain. And the winner is dun, 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 Curse of the Reaper. This was a really tight category, so hard to pick a winner. I read a freaking boatload of slashers in the month of June. I had a whole slasher themed readathon for my Patreons, and we just all went crazy, read a lot of slashers. You didn't have to read slashers to participate, but I stuck to just reading slashers for almost the entirety of the month. So lots of choices. It was hard to even just narrow it down just to a few for the nominees, but the reason why Curse of the Reaper wins is because it had great character development, an interesting story. It was so well done. Also a great audiobook. That's why it was nominated in the best audiobook category as well. The book that comes so close to being tied with Curse of the Reaper, though, is Escape from Happydale. I do want to give this book a special shout out because it almost won for best slasher book that I read in 2023. However, like I said, Curse of the Reaper had a little bit extra characterization, a little more fleshed out in terms of, the characters and the mystery at the core of the story. This one, though, is a lot of fun, and I loved it, so I do want to give a special shout out to this one. But yeah, Curse of the Reaper by Brian McCulley takes the official award for Best Slasher Book. Next category, Best Coming of Age Book that I read in 2023. The nominees are Jedi Summer, December Park by Ronald Malfi, and Of Foster Homes and Flies by Chad Lutzke. These three books are all fantastic coming-of-age stories, but the winner has to be Of Foster Home and Flies. Like I said earlier, so powerful, so emotional. You really feel for the main character. This is a very well done and kind of a bleak coming-of-age story, but there is a glimmer of hope, and I like how it all played out in the end, let's just say that. So definitely not your typical standard coming of age. It's also in a very more condensed timeline, like over, I think, a week or a weekend. I can't remember, but it doesn't take place over a whole year. It takes place in a shorter amount of time. Next is the category for the award for the bleakest book that I read. This is kind of a downer category, but some books are super bleak, and so let's just talk about it. Let's talk about the nominees. The nominees are Let the Right One In, Of Foster Home and Flies. Like I said, that book, it's emotional and it's bleak. Dead Girl Blues by David Sodergren. Super bleak. Also, a mystery at the core, great character development. Valley of the Dolls. This has some trashy, dramatic elements, but at the end of the day, it's super bleak. When you really think about it, it's very sad and bleak. We're following a group of women who are trying to make it to the very top of, kind of Hollywood, in the theater world as well, in the business world, in certain different areas, and they're trying to get to the top, but when they get to the top, they find that it's not all that they thought it would be. There's really nowhere to go but down. It's kind of a sad message at the end of that book. And finally, the last nominee, Scan Lines by Todd Kessling. There are discussions of suicide, so look up trigger warnings if you've not read it, but you're interested. It is a very deep book, a very emotionally heavy book, I will say that. But the winner, that is the bleakest of all, has to be Let the Right One In. There is a main character who is just so off-putting, so terrible. The book is bleaker than both movies, because there's an American version and a foreign version of the movie. Both movies, I feel like, kind of altered the story a bit, whereas the book, a certain character and what he's into is so bleak and off-putting and gross, and I would look up trigger warnings if you're sensitive to anything having to do with kids, because yeah, Let the Right One goes there, and especially with one particular character, it's bleak. It's freaking bleak and off-putting. Next up, the award for the Best Possession Book, and the nominees are A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay, Come Closer by Sarah Gran, This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno, and Goddess of Filth. This one was so tough because I love possession horror, and some of these aren't even pure possession books. It might be possession adjacent, so I'm not confirming that there is an actual possession in any of these books, but let's just say that possession is mentioned on the back of the book for all of these, so I'm putting them in this category. So I didn't spoil anything. It may or may not have truly to do with possession or not, but the winner for me, and this was tough as I said, it is Come Closer by Sarah Gran. Another great audiobook, by the way. I didn't nominate it, but it did have a great audiobook. Very bleak as well. I thought it was so well written, very fascinating story, just completely well-rounded and totally encapsulating, totally enthralling. I gotta say, I gotta give it to this one because I just enjoyed it so much. I read it in like one sitting. It's a great possession story, but honestly, you can't go wrong with any of the nominees that I just listed off. Next up, the award for the cutest book I read in 2023. You'll see by the covers alone, most of these look pretty darn cute. So the nominees are Sir Simon's Super Scarer, Pumpkinheads, and Mothman's Merry Cryptid Christmas. Like I said, all of these are cute. Super, super cute. If you like cute stories, all of these will do you just fine. But the winner is Sir Simon's Super Scarer. It's so cute. It's about a little boy who moves into a house. There's a little ghost there. He's working there. His whole job is to haunt the house, and he's all excited that a new family's moving in. When he discovers there's a kid there, he's like, oh no, a kid, it's gonna make my life harder. When it comes to haunting houses with kids in them, it's always difficult to do that. So he convinces the kid to help him with his chores. Oh, you wanna be a ghost? I'll take you on as like my intern, like learn what it's like to be a ghost. So he kind of pushes his ghostly chores onto the little kid. But then he starts to feel bad that he's putting off all of his things on the little kid, so he's like, I'll take some of your chores. And in the end, they both find out they're terrible. Like, the ghost is terrible at doing stuff that the kid's supposed to do. The kid's terrible at doing stuff the ghost is supposed to do. But what they're great at is being friends. It's so cute! And the animation's like beyond. I gotta say, it's a perfect, wonderful, heartfelt, cute, adorable Halloween-themed read, or a read for any time of the year, but ghosts kind of go with spooky season, so you could totally read it for Halloween time. I recommend it for any time of year. It would be a great book to check out. It's so cute. It's very, very short because it's a picture book. I just loved it so much. I had such a great time. It was definitely worthy of being the winner. These next few do not have nominees. There's just one clear winner. So, next category is the most unhinged scene that I read in 2023 from any book. That winner has to be a scene from the book The Eyes of the Beast by Steve Harris, where this dude is in this nightmare world and he is in like a alternate version of his room and like a topsy-turvy, upside down, think Stranger Things, like upside down version of his room. And all of a sudden these monster moths come out and swarm him, and normal moths don't have teeth, but in this nightmare world, they do have teeth, and they bite up his whole body, including his dick. They bite up his dick, and he's like, my penis! And he tries to use his magic amulet to heal it, but it doesn't work, so he's like,
Great, my penis is all bitten up.
It was unhinged, it was weird. Later, he gets healed by a random-ass mermaid. It was unhinged, hence why it was the clear winner. Next is Best Halloween-Themed Read from 2023, and this one goes to Red Harvest. I love this book. I thought it had wonderful Halloween vibes. The only reason that Autumn Crow High, Fresh Hell doesn't win is because it was technically set in summer. Did it have Halloween vibes though? Yes. But you could read it any time of the year. Red Harvest, I think, would be great for just Halloween time. I think that's the strongest part of the book, is the Halloween atmosphere, whereas Autumn Crow High, Fresh Hell has so much more than just Halloween vibes and Halloween atmosphere. It has great characters, a great setting. It has fully fleshed out lore surrounding the town, a big mystery at the center. So yeah, Autumn Crow High, a well-rounded, great book, whereas Red Harvest specifically would be a great Halloween-themed read. You could read it in October or in September when you're trying to gear up for spooky season, and it would get you in the mood. It would be a perfect little thematic slasher. Next, Best Christmas-themed read. This award goes to Candy Cane Kills by Brian McCulley. I thought this was a fantastic little slasher. Was it the best book I ever read? No. Could it have been a little bit better in some areas? Yes. But it was a ball. It was short, quick, sweet, fun, a wonderful slasher, kind of just everything you're looking for in a little quick slasher. Also, the setting specifically was marvelous. Creepy house, set during winter and Christmas time, so it had the Christmassy vibes, and that's why I awarded it as the best Christmas read, because you could read it and you could get those slashing vibes, but also the Christmassy vibes all working together. Next, favorite subgenre, and in 2021, just to give you guys kind of a time warp type of scenario and overview of the last couple of years. So in 2021, for this category, for me, my favorite subgenre was animal attack books. In 2022, my favorite subgenre was coming of age books. And in 2023, dun 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 dun, my favorite subgenre in general was weird fiction. I loved weird books in 2023, and you could tell because I talked about a lot of weird books when I was going through all the nominees of the different categories. Lots of weird books were mentioned. So yeah, I gotta say, weird fiction, I discovered I like weird. And I even like cosmic, which goes hand in hand, almost side by side with weird. Not always, but a lot of times it's weird adjacent. So cosmic and weird, heck yeah, sign me up. That's something I really freaking had a ball with in 2023. And last, and maybe I guess most negative award, we have the award for the biggest disappointment. Now this one does have nominees, so let's go over some disappointing reads right here. Here are all of my nominees. Demonic by Jeff Strand. Salem's Lot by Stephen King. I'm sorry, Kat. I'm sorry. I love you. Don't hate me. Don't hate me. I thought it was boring. I'm so sorry, Kat. Young Scrooge by R.L. Stine. Hated it. I didn't like the main character at all. I didn't think it was a great retelling. You know, it's supposed to be kind of like in the vein of A Christmas Carol. I didn't like it at all. The Devil's Laughter by William W. Johnstone. Shitty as hell. Nothing redeeming about it except for the cover of the vintage edition, essentially. It was bad. Next nominee, There's No Way I Die First. Also very bad. This had such potential. It could have been so good. We have like this killer clown coming to this rich kid party. He's picking through them little by little, one by one, whatever you want to say. To me though, the characters were obnoxious. There was a weird love subplot that did not fit in. I loathed it. I didn't think it was funny either. When it was trying to be funny, it just didn't work for me. It didn't make me laugh. Next nominee, Barracuda Swarm. One phrase to describe why this is here. Where are the Barracudas, bitch? I don't know, because they were not in the book Barracuda Swarm. And finally, the last nominee, Cover by Jack Ketchum. I have loved other books by Jack Ketchum, including The Girl Next Door and Offspring. However, Cover was a huge disappointment because it's a slasher book. What I hated about it was the protagonist. It was a horror author, and he had a wife, and he also had a young girlfriend, and they were trying to all make it work together, and I just thought it was gross. It was cringy. I freaking hated it. I hated it so much. All of these books could take the cake, honestly, because they were all disappointments in one way, shape, or form. However, I'm going to tell you why I chose what I chose. The winner is Demonic by Jeff Strand, and the reason that is the winner for most disappointing is because this is the first and only book that I've ever disliked by Jeff Strand. There was just something about the characters' personalities in this book that I did not like, and honestly, it was a lot of killing and gore, which was good, but the humor, which Jeff Strand usually is so good at, did not really come off in the way I think he meant it to, at least not for me. It didn't work for me. So yeah, that's why it's disappointing, because I've loved everything else I've ever read from Jeff Strand. He's usually like a go-to, definitely gonna enjoy author, except for this. However, if you had to ask me what was the worst, the hands down worst, most shittiest read, it's gotta be The Devil's Laughter, but it's not most disappointing because I knew this book would probably be shit. And I was right. So I wasn't really overly disappointed. I was hoping for some more fun scenes and some more trashy scenes, because it didn't even really have that. Sometimes you read a trashy paperback, and yeah, it's bad, but at least there's some glimmers of bonkersness? I don't know even how to say this. At least there's some glimmers of hilarity. This had none of that. It had none of that. So in terms of worst book overall, this one. However, biggest disappointment, Demonic. Overall, let's go back to something positive. It was a great reading year, guys. And just because a book won in any of these categories doesn't mean it's going to wind up on my top reads of the year, by the way. So stay tuned, because that video is coming very, very soon. And you will see which books officially make the list and which books may not have. But I really enjoyed a lot of the books I talked about today. Even if they don't appear on the best of list that I will release later, I still enjoyed them, hence why they were either nominated or won for certain categories that I talked about today. But for this time, guys, that is it for me. Till next time, you know what you can do. Keep on killing it. Bye, guys.